Hello, welcome Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 28 Globalization, let us start our lecture to continue our topic Globalization, Culture and Identity. India has been exposed to cultural contacts with other civilizations since millennia. It has been continually making adaptive changes in its cultural styles, traits and forms as it encounters other cultures. It has a history of accommodating identities. The cultural impact of globalization on the identity of this civilization or its impact upon the identities of local culture, therefore, is bound to be mediated by this resilience. There are several reasons for this observation. In the first instance, the initial historical conditions of Indian social structure have been unique. It is characterized by immense plurality of communities, languages, cultural diacritical symbols, and ethnic style. A variety of cultural traits and cultural styles have over centuries given identity to the communities, but not in total isolation. Cultural interaction among regions and communities has persisted in a mode of co-sharing and mutual accommodation. This commonality has existed beyond the religion and ethnic divides. A recent study by the Anthropological Survey of India illustrates this fact. It observes that the sharing of cultural traits among the communities in India, in all about 4,635 in number, shows high correlation of traits among states within the macro regions such as those in the south, northwest India, central and western India, and so on. There is very high correlation of traits between the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, between scheduled tribes and Hindus, between Hindus and Sikhs, between Hindu and Muslims, which is very high indeed, and between Hindus and Jain. The high correlation between Hindu and Buddhist may also be explained in the same way. This fact that these communities interact across space or states is important. Thus, we notice that despite the plurality of identity, a micro-linkage of cultural bonds has existed in India throughout history. It continues to subsist even today and constitutes the cultural unity of India despite plurality of local identities. The cultural impact of globalization gets managed within this process of internal dynamics and resilience of the local cultures. The perception that globalization threatens local culture is being increasingly invalidated. It is observed that in the process of globalization, local cultures are reinforced and also globalized. Ronald Robertson has called this process globalization. It indicates how local cultures get increasingly enmeshed with the global culture through selective adaptation of symbolic form and styles in their products through micro-marketing. Based on the Japanese experience, this process affirms how local cultures begin to occupy a global space by constructing differentiation of consumers. Its examples are witnesses in the field of tourism and popularity of ethnic supermarkets in India. We witness how our local culture traditions are also making adaptive responses in the form and styles of cultural product in tune with the inter-regional and global requirements. For instance, regional languages are being creolized across regions or even in the global terms. The incidence of bilingualism has increased in our country from about 13.4% in 1971 to 64.2% in 1991. The culinary style, the pattern of dress, local ethnic cultural object, ritual, religious icon and local custom, etc. are now increasingly becoming pan-Indian and even global due to the increasing size of Indian diaspora. The process of micro-marketing is penetrating deep into this sphere. The momentum for this is of course provided by the emergent forces of economic development. It has triggered a new wave of internal and external migration and establishes a linkage between the culture and market. It also extends the space for cultural interaction as never before. No doubt it generates a threat perception about the cultural identity, but correspondingly it also reinforces the identity consciousness. This ambivalence, notwithstanding the Indian response toward the other cultures, has throughout remained selective and adaptive. Globalization is therefore leading increasingly towards hybridization or fusion of cultural style and forms rather than their total displacement. This also shows the strength of cultural resilience of the Indian society. Now let us conclude the unit. The experience of globalization had a mixed feeling both of enchantment as well as disenchantment. But India, since independence, has been making conscious efforts through its democratic institutions, policies of welfare, and devotion of power to the regional, ethnic, and cultural minorities to establish a synergy between local identity and national development. The linguistic reorganization of states, the policies of protective discrimination, the continual efforts to bring about better and more effective federal structure of governance by improving the center-state relationship, the policy of offering protection to the ethnic, regional and cultural entities, etc., have been continually implemented and updated to the accommodate cultural, social and political identities. We have largely succeeded, but not in all cases, but not without conflict and violence. Globalization, to the extent that it generates new inequalities or sharpens the consciousness of inequalities, does contain within it the seeds of social and cultural conflict in the society. It makes the intensity of symbolic transmission across the lands more effective and easier, and it also sharpens in people's mind the sense of social, economic, and cultural deprivations. It has a regional, national, and global dimension. The premise that globalization generates conflict in society, which sometimes has disastrous consequences, is based upon the possibility of extreme mismatch between globalization and the removal of poverty or deprivation of classes, communities, and ethnicities. It is also true that organized violence such as terrorism and insurgency erupts in society where people feel that they are being subordinated culturally, politically, and economically, where dominant powers are perceived to be totally unresponsive to democratic protest, and where basic human rights are denied. Does globalization increase poverty in a society or reduce it? Does it enhance the ability of some nations to structurally dominate the weaker ones? Ideologically, debate on these issues goes on, but the result remains inconclusive. The evidence available so far suggests that globalization reduces the absolute level of poverty, but does enhance the incidence of relative inequalities among people. If we observe the pattern of social mobility and incidence of poverty since independence in our country, we find that measures of social welfare, education, and economic development have contributed to the reduction of poverty, but the relative social inequalities have increased. In absolute terms, the standard of consumption has qualitatively improved in villages and towns. The reservation policy, together with focus upon education, has created a limited middle class among the weaker sections, minorities, and ethnic groups. The quality and extent of participation in politics and power sharing by the backward classes, tribes, and scheduled caste, etc., has radically changed. A substantial degree of empowerment of these groups has taken place in the political realm, but in the economic and educational field, the gap between them and the dominant classes or class persists. As Singh pointed out in 2004, globalization does pose challenges on several fronts, foremost of which may be economic. For reasons of history, pluralistic social structure and culture, and the democratic path of the development that we have adopted, we enjoy tremendous resilience to meet with the challenges of globalization. Notwithstanding this, a caution, fine-tuning and synergy in our economic policies is required. The most strategic effect of such a policy related to the development of our human resource base, agriculture and infrastructure. Economic development in a balanced manner holds the key to our ability to meet with the challenges of globalization and accommodate the upsurge of identities. Here we want to close this lecture and we have come to the end of the unit. Thanks for so patientful hearing.